watching this week's harrowing story unfold has been a non-stop drama. Frankly, it's draining. Look, there's a lot of information swirling around out there about the Boston bombings, but until we get the most important questions answered, we don't know enough to make conclusions. After many false reports and misleading suspects, two brothers were finally identified. One allegedly killed in a firefight with police, and the other still on the run. It's resulted in a police state-style lockdown of the entire metro Boston area, with thousands of paramilitary troops and tanks patrolling the streets. And the way that they've linked these two men is by narrowing down thousands of crowdsourced photos and matching it to surveillance cameras. And although the establishment has no problem airing the deadly explosion frame by frame 1,000 times to the American public, the actual footage that they claim links these two suspects to the bombing might not ever be seen. The New York Times says, quote, one video, which officials say they did not release, shows the two men walking slowly away after a bomb exploded while the crowd fled. Look, I for one think that we should demand to see this video, the video that would clear up any misconceptions that these two men were indeed responsible. The same two suspects that it turns out, in an interesting twist, are actually Chechen, which is an ethnic group from Chechnya, a region in Russia. So, of course, pundits and politicians alike are a little perplexed at how to fit this new detail into the War on Terror narrative. Take, for example, what P.J. Crowley, former Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs, had to say. He tweeted this morning, if the two Boston suspects were from Chechnya, the next question is, who sent them? And beyond killing people, what agenda? Yes, PJ, I know it's your job, but please stop prematurely insinuating that this is some sort of global terrorism plot. Because again, it's pure speculation. But as we watch the details emerge from the case of the Boston bombing, it's important to think about this tragedy not only in comparison to what we've seen here in the U.S., we need to put it in a global context. After all, the horror this country experienced in Boston is shared by many countries around the world on a daily basis. Take, for example, the deadly wave of bombings that have just hit Iraq this week. On Monday, attacks took place in at least 6 different provinces, killing up to 55 people and injuring 300 more. The day was so devastating that it's now being coined Black Monday. And just today, I woke up to 3 more tragedies striking Iraq. One was an attack on a Sunni mosque where mortar shells and bombs killed 7 worshippers and wounded 14 others. Another took place on a Shiite mosque with 2 killed and 14 wounded. But perhaps most tragic is the news of a suicide bombing in a cafe filled with young people enjoying pool and hookah. The blast killed 32 and injured 65 others. Think about that for 1 second. You leaving your place of worship or just sitting in a cafe with your friends, and all of a sudden your entire life is changed, if not gone, in a split second. And sectarian violence is relatively new for Iraq, a country that has had very little internal strife before the decade-long U.S. occupation. And the violence is only amplified leading up to Iraq's first election since the U.S. withdrawal. But let's move on to Yemen, another country that's incurring the horrors of the war on terror. 2 drone strikes targeted, quote, suspected al-Qaeda militants this week, killing 5 people. And as we all know, a suspected militant, according to the government, is just any military-aged male. So when we hear rhetoric such as suspected militant, we have to question it because we don't know who these people are and why they're being killed. And there's one common thread of all this linking this international violence. It's all a result of U.S. foreign policy and thus our tax dollars at work. Here's the bottom line. As we learn more about events and motives behind the Boston bombings, it's vital that we don't fall prey to the same mental trap, revenge. Because if there's one thing we know for sure, it's that violence begets violence.